So the Atelier series has been around for a very long time. And the latest entry, Atelier Ryza, in my opinion, is something special. Something very special. And no, I'm not just talking about her thighs. The game itself improves upon the series in ways that other games haven't for a very long time. And before Ryza, if anybody ever asked me what game should they start their entry into the Atelier series, personally, I always recommended Atelier Iris 2. And the reason why I felt that way was because Atelier Iris 2 was a good way to bridge the gap between your generic RPGs or your JRPGs such as Final Fantasy, Star Ocean, Tales series, that you're used to having an overarching story with the turn-based RPG elements and adding a little bit extra to it in the form of alchemy to kind of give you the feel of the alchemy system that is in the Atelier series. And so Atelier Iris 1 and 2 and 3 were more focused on that combat story-driven style RPG that you're used to if you're not a fan of the Atelier series. So I always recommended Atelier Iris 2 being a more story-driven and combat-driven game. But now that we have Ryza, things have changed quite a bit for me. In fact, people ask me if they should buy Atelier Ryza, and having never played an Atelier game, I usually tell them yes, because it's different. It gives that fast-paced combat that you find so much in newer RPGs. Especially these days where you're seeing even the Final Fantasy series going more action-oriented instead of turn-based combat. And so Atelier Ryza does a very good job of bridging that same gap that, in my opinion, Atelier Iris 1 and 2 did back in the PS2 days. So why is this game so different? Well, this game is vastly different in my opinion because it gets away from the style that was set in Rorona and on. Atelier Rorona was in the PS3 era. It was the first one on the PS3. And while it was a good game at the time, personally, I can't go back and play it because it feels too outdated. The combat doesn't feel fluid enough. The alchemy system, while still fun, is not up to par with the current entries in the series. Now, Atelier Lulua, for example, was a good entry in the series. It got away from the typical elements of the Atelier series that you were seeing up to that point. A lot of the Atelier games before that, so within the Rorona entry to, I would say not Nelk, but probably before Nelk, I think that was, what was that, Sophie or Shally? I forget, I think it was Sophie. So, up to that point, you had the Atelier series having time constraints and making it kind of hard to fully and freely explore the game and the environments, and to really fully enjoy the game without having to feel like you have to rush for certain things so you don't miss out on the game. And so Atelier Lulua did a good job in getting away from those time constraints, allowing you to freely explore the world and freely make your alchemy whilst having an overarching story that was common in, or that is common in many JRPGs. Atelier Ryza has a overarching story, albeit a lighthearted one, which is not to say it's a bad thing. It's a very good thing because these games have been kind of, for lack of a better term, laid back and relaxed. You could just pop in and play an Atelier game and lose yourself for hours on end in the alchemy system, never even going into combat, and just getting lost in the intricacies that is the alchemy system. But then you do have the combat. And the combat has always had flash to it. It's always had special moves, special abilities, and super attacks, using items to blow things up. And so it's always had a fun combat system. But Atelier Ryza takes it one step further. It makes it where it's no longer a turn-based system. Instead, it's more along the lines of, the best way that I could put it is a combination of active time battle that you would see in Final Fantasy mixed with a AI controlled system, much similar to the Tales of series or Star Ocean. So you have that weirdly well-balanced combat system that makes it very fun. Now, that's where, in my opinion, the game shows itself to be a breath of fresh air. It shows what the capabilities of this style of game can be, and it makes it so enjoyable and so satisfying to be in combat. And while, just like in prior entries, you can find yourself lost in the Atelier system and the Alchemy system, I should say, crafting new items, improving upon them to make them stronger, to create new recipes and make new discoveries. While all that is fine and you do lose yourself in that system, and again, just like prior games, you can lose yourself for hours without having to go in combat or even progress in the story, the combat steps aside and feels almost like an entirely different game, which some people don't like it, and I understand why they wouldn't, because they're so familiar with the prior Atelier games, they're so familiar with how the prior turn-based combat system is, and this new combat system doesn't seem to resonate with them. But at that same time, this game, in my opinion, was made more for newcomers to the series, to breathe new air into the life of this series that's been going on for as long as it has. And not saying that the series has been struggling or anything, but let's be 100% honest, the series has been a very niche series in the past. And honestly, before I picked up Atelier Iris 2, I had never heard of the series to begin with. It just so happened I was walking into GameStop and I saw the box art for Atelier Iris 2. I picked it up and I looked at the back of it and it looked interesting. It looked like an anime style RPG that I would enjoy, and I did thoroughly. And so ever since then I was hooked. And so then I got curious and I saw Atelier Ryza was coming out soon, so I was like, okay, well, I enjoyed Atelier Iris 2. Let me go pre-order and buy Atelier Ryza, which I did, and I played it, and I enjoyed it. Then I went ahead and I bought Atelier Iris 1 and 3. I played both of those. I enjoyed them. Iris 3 not as much as 1 and 2. Then it piqued my interest into the Mana Khemia series, which is a spin-off, and I bought those as well. And since then, it was like a drug. It was like a drug. Atelier Iris 2 was my gateway into the Atelier world, just as Atelier Ryza is the gateway into the Atelier world this generation. So people ask me, what game should they play next? Because I've had people that I've recommended Atelier Ryza to, and they've finished the game. They said it felt a little short, which I can understand that. The game is a little bit shorter than most Atelier games are, and it's shorter than what I would like it to be because the game is absolutely beautiful. But from that point, they asked me what should they play, and then I can recommend whatever I feel like because they've already gotten the taste of the game. They understand how the game is. So a lot of times I'll recommend maybe the Dusk series, so Atelier Aisha, Atelier Eskan Laji, Atelier Shali. Or maybe even go to Atelier Toturi. I might recommend that to them because Atelier Toturi was a good entry, even though it was the one after Ryza. Atelier Toturi had a darker story, had a better storyline, where Atelier Ryza had pretty much a forgettable storyline, just to be 100% honest with you. Now, Atelier Ryza, the story is, like I said, lighthearted. Her and her friends want to set off on adventures, and their adventures lead them to alchemy. And once it leads them to alchemy, they discover all the different things that they can do with the alchemy, including to renovate a house to become their secret hideout and their base of operations. And much like prior entries, there's a lot of humor into the game. There's a lot of, let's be honest, adult themes in the game, which I don't have a problem with. The only problem I have with this game, and it's a minor one, I really, personally, I don't care too much about it, but I know a lot of people do. And I know a lot of people have problems with this, especially those who are familiar with the series. The problem that I see is the camera angles. The camera angles can get a little suggestive at times. Now, while prior entries did have suggestive themes and had adult themes in form of humors or humorous ways, such as the mentors hitting on the students, you know, this game tends to focus on body parts of Ryza a little bit too much. And I see it everywhere that the people who have been doing the reviews for Atelier Ryza, they've been saying thick thighs save sales and this and that. But Atelier Ryza is more than just thick thighs. And I know I did a live stream saying let's get down with the thickness. It was more to just kind of be a joke more than anything else. But in all honesty, the game has probably some of the most beautiful environments that I've seen in any Atelier game. And that's including Atelier Aisha, which the environments in Atelier Aisha were gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. But now, being in Atelier Ryza, the environments are leagues beyond any of the prior Atelier games. And the graphics look phenomenal on the PS4. They look phenomenal on the Switch. The gameplay, the way that the game plays is very similar to prior games. But the alchemy has changed, and the alchemy, in my opinion, is very familiar to me in regards because of Atelier Iris 1 and 2. The alchemy reminds me of that a lot, because the way that Atelier Iris 1 and 2 worked with the alchemy as far as the weapons went, it was kind of a chain. So you would go and craft one weapon, and then you could, depending on the recipe that you were going for, you could craft it into 2 different weapons. And this game, Ryza, does it the same way. So if you're crafting a bomb, for example, you can learn new recipes from that bomb, and it gives you different recipes to learn. So you can learn them both, but it gives you that option, which I think is a phenomenal way to do the alchemy system. The alchemy system, for example, in Atelier Lulua was a little bit tedious and difficult. You had to find recipes that it gave you hints that were just, the hints were bad. The hints were bad. It was very difficult to find a lot of the things. And while I enjoy that difficulty, I really do, it's not friendly to newcomers of the series. It's very off-putting. Where this game, Ryza, you can tell, was geared and created to be a little bit more friendly to newcomers of the series. And yes, okay, they did sexualize Ryza a little bit more than prior entries, but you know what? It's eye candy, it's fan service. I don't mind that because the gameplay is very well thought out, especially in combat, and I can't get enough of the combat. When you start combat, if you hit the enemy, you start with combat points that immediately you can use to increase the level of your combat ability. And for every level of your combat ability that gets increased up to 5, I believe, you can attack more and do more damage. And on top of that, there's assist skills. So basically, your allies will shout out orders for you to do. They'll say, use an item, use magic, do a physical attack. And if you do those said tasks in the middle of combat, your allies will follow up with an extra attack. And it's very flashy, really cool to look at, and it's exciting, and I love it. Items also play a bigger part in combat than they did prior, and that's not to say that they didn't play a big part in combat in prior games, but in this game, it's again friendlier, because in prior games, the way that it was set up is when you use an item in combat, once you use it all up, the item is gone. In Atelier Ryza, you have the items, you take it into combat, and you use the items, and the items are not gone. You still have the items. You have what's called was it CC? So you have a certain amount of times that you can use the items in combat. Each item will have a combat point or a number next to it, saying that the cost will be 2, it'll be 3, it'll be 4. So you have a total of 10 costs. So whatever number that is, that's the amount of times you can use it, divisible by 10, or by the number. I'm sorry, divisible by the number in 10. So if you have a bomb, the bomb has 2 costs. That means you could use it 5 times before the cost is completely up. Once the cost is completely up, you can sort of recycle another item to refresh those points so you can use the items again. And once combat is all said and done, you don't lose the item, which makes it really good because then you don't have to carry a whole bunch of items with you and you can focus more on gathering the materials, which is something that prior games kind of tried to dance around a little bit by adding an extra box for you to carry those items around. And again, once you would use those items, they'd be gone. They're gone forever. You'd have to make some new items. And it helps for newcomers because they don't have to worry about that. They make their bombs, they make their crafts, they make their healing salves, they make their elixirs. They don't have to worry after that about the items disappearing and having to go and find those rare materials that they might have used to make that said elixir. So overall, I think Atelier Ryza is a fantastic entry. I was super excited for the game, and after playing the game for many hours and getting lost in the game, I am full on ready to play the next entry, and I hope that the next entry continues off of Ryza. I know some people wanted to continue off of Lulua. Well, I do love the cast in Lulua. I love the combat style of Ryza. I love Ryza herself. Honestly, I think she's one of my favorite protagonists because her personality is just charming. It's absolutely charming. And that's one of the things that I love about the game so much, is that she has that personality that is charming. And that's not to say that prior characters didn't, because Lulua did, Eska and Laji did. Now that's a whole nother story. And Aisha did. It's just, there's something different, something special about Ryza as a character, and something special about this game that I feel everybody should at least give it a try. Don't be put off because of character designs. Don't be put off because combat is different. At least give it a try one way or the other. Maybe if your friend bought a physical copy, maybe you can borrow the physical copy from your friend. Whatever it is, just give the game a shot. It's fantastic, and I can't get enough of it. Personally, I wish it was longer. You can complete the game in about 20 hours or so. Which is the low side for Atelier games, because Atelier Lulua I had 60 hours in, and prior entries would normally be about, in the first playthrough, about 40 hours plus. So that's the biggest downside for me, is that it's a short game. But other than that, still a fantastic entry in the series. Probably one of my favorites. I'm not gonna say it's my favorite, because my favorite is still Atelier Iris 2, but it is definitely top 5 in my list of Atelier games. So until the next time, guys, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. You guys have a great rest of your day.